Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is that you are tuning in. This is Unapologetically Me, featuring me. No special guest, just me. Hello, everyone. How are you guys doing today? I hope you guys have had a great weekend. Hope you're ready to go with some more information. I've been talking about so many different things throughout this entire 6-month period. Ever since Nikki was reported missing, things just weren't adding up for me. I have invested hours upon hours of time on finding out what happened to Nikki. In this video, I'm going to go over everything that I have concluded from the last few videos, along with more revelations about what really went on at the inquest, what was really said that was not printed in the media. If you haven't seen my last few videos, they're all in a playlist. I have a few different playlists. I have just the Nicola Bulley playlist, which has every video that I've ever made on her. I think there's about 26 or so videos in there. They're all videos I've done up until this point, looking at all different types of theories. Basically, it's just me getting information out as I was learning about it and just giving it to you guys. I have another playlist titled Uncovering the Act, which has 6 videos showing how the recovery of the body was staged. This is particularly important because of how the body was handled, as it was yanked up a riverbank with absolutely no respect and no care whatsoever. We all saw people standing around laughing during that entire event, and that's because Nicola's body was not there. That's my opinion, and I base that off of several different facts, which are outlined throughout that particular playlist. If I can make a suggestion, if you want to get straight to the point of those 6 videos, then part 4 revisited, or part 4.5, in which I had to make in addition to part 4, because it really just breaks it all down, that would be the one you'd want to see. It's extremely easy to understand because it's pretty much just looking at photos and what do you see for yourself. So while we're on the topic of part 4 revisited, there's been an update. Because Chris was allocated a seat at the inquest, it has now made him eligible for complainant status. He also has been responded to, finally, in one of his Freedom of Information Act requests, which is a little bit of progress, right? And that is the flight pattern of the helicopters on the 2 days, February 18th as well as 19th. If you remember, we talked about those helicopters in great detail in part 4 and part 4 revisited, and how they were 2 separate helicopters because the photos and the videos were taken over 2 separate days, February 18th and 19th. You will be surprised to know that via Freedom Information Act, there were no helicopters deployed by Lancashire Police on either day, February 18th or 19th. I expected that there would be no record of a helicopter request for February 18th, that's Saturday, by Lancashire Police Department, because I already explained in that video that that helicopter was used for a football game as well as a completely different land search for an injury near the River Wire in nearby Eccleston. So that was probably called in by Eccleston PD. But I was not expecting that they hadn't requested helicopters for the 19th of February. The day Nikki's body was found. As we can clearly see for ourselves, there was a helicopter present, hovering over where the body was found, and it's clear that helicopter on the 19th of February was there for the recovery process. Jason Rothwell made a statement, a very public statement, about how he was asked to point out exactly where the body was so that the helicopter could get a better view of the location. So who were those helicopters working for, if not Lancashire Police? Who would have had the authority to request helicopters for the recovery of a body other than Lancashire Police Department? This all points in the direction of a staged event. And for anyone who is new here, who did not view those videos, all I ask is, you can do what you want, but please refrain from commenting until you've at least watched those videos. Because just coming here and telling me that I'm wrong without listening to what I've said doesn't really prove your point to anybody who has actually viewed those videos. We talked about the man in black and how, in my opinion, he doesn't exist. He was brought up to take the place of 2 fishermen who really were suspicious, but were never found or questioned.
The man who came forward with the information about these suspicious men on the day before and the day of Nikki's disappearance had to go to the police a few times with this concern, and he was blown off both times. DSI Rebecca Smith told us in the February 15th press conference that there was an appeal for those men to come forward, but they never had come forward. There's no doubt that people would still have questioned these men if something hadn't been brought up about a suspicious man at the inquest, yet also through the inquest been told that the suspicious man is irrelevant. It has also always been very much the intent for everyone to be directed to look at something else other than the truth. Deflection is a huge part in the Nicola Bulley case. I am well aware that it has been alleged that the man in black is in fact Paul. While I do have respect for other content creators, I do want to point out that opinions are not facts. What led to this person's belief that the man in black is Paul is the video of the morning that Nikki went missing, which I do have to point out is the only CCTV we have that actually does not have fabricated timestamps. That is the only video that actually has not been altered in any way. And that is not my opinion. That is a fact. I did a video months ago about the blue versus black, and it has been proven that Ring cameras make black clothing look blue in certain lighting and certain times of day. In fact, the blue tint, along with a few different other colors, such as green, pink, and purple, are the most complained about things on the Ring community. I would be posting them throughout this entire video if I posted every single complaint about the blue tint or pink tint or random tints that the Ring camera gives off during certain times of day when lighting is different. It is more seen on overcast days, which we all can see it was overcast on the day Nicola went missing. This was looked at by someone who knows his stuff, and I have a whole video about that. As I said, nothing was purposely made to look blue. So if that video was not altered, then that blows everything about this person's theory out of the water. Factually, I do not agree with the person's theory at all. He did not prove that the man in black is Paul Ansel. He just gave an opinion and how he came to that opinion. Very much identical to how I came to the opinion that there was never a man in black. And I showed you and I told you how I came to that opinion. Let's pretend that the man in black was actually there. What Richard Fife said about the man in black is that he was strange. He had never seen this man before. This man was out of place, which is the same things that were said about the fisherman that the man in black was used to deflect from. Many of you at one end are saying Paul knew the Fletchers. Paul knew everybody in that area. They're all connected somehow. Yet at the same time, we're to believe that this man in black is Paul Ansel when at the same time he'd never been seen before. It doesn't make sense, you guys, okay? I showed you how I came to my opinion. But rather than tell you what to believe, I simply gave you the information and I asked that you think for yourself. It's just basic critical thinking. Does this make sense? When we look at everything together, does this make sense? There is no fact-based evidence to prove what he is saying about certain things, this being one of them. Though I will admit it is much easier for people who do not enjoy thinking for themselves to relate to someone who tells them what to believe. I'm not throwing shade at this YouTuber at all. As I've said, he has a channel and he's doing his thing. And he has gained far more subscribers in the last 6 months than I have. But I simply cannot agree with how he got there. I will never compare myself to another creator. My name says it all. My end goal is justice for the victim. I do not believe we can get justice without the truth. I will not put a video out telling you that I have proven something if I cannot prove it. I will not lead my viewers to believe that I am 100% right all the time. I show you facts and I tell you my opinion based on those facts. I will never tell you what to think. And it is really sad that some people have become so lazy that they would much rather listen to someone tell them what to think than to have them think for themselves after providing facts and evidence. That is the difference between me and some other creators. Before you comment in my comment section that I need to change something about what I'm doing, and the way I run my channel and start being more like somebody else, that comment means nothing to me because I will never do that. It is not helpful to the case, and it is not helpful to the victim to spread rumors as if they are fact. Let's quickly go over the arrest of the fisherman rumor while we're talking about rumors. I'm not even 100% sure where that came from, but I am going to say something right now, and I suggest that you listen to me and not skip through this part. The Nicola Bulley case has been closed. Fact. No one is going to be arrested for her murder unless there is an independent investigation opened up. They were never looking for a third party. Fact. They were never looking to arrest anyone. Fact. Why would they decide now to start looking for someone to arrest? When a case is considered to be closed, it is just that. It is closed. Fact. They are no longer working on it, and to be frank, they never did work on it. They worked on the cover-up. They never worked on an investigation. Fact. So just please keep that in mind. I don't mean to be harsh, I'm just trying to be honest, and I'm being frank. All right. So now that we have addressed a few things, I do not believe Paul was a man in black. And I think that's pretty obvious because I don't believe that there was a man in black. I also do not believe that Paul killed Nicola. I have never believed that. And from everything that I have researched personally, I have not followed rumors and drama. I have followed facts. And this is why I can say confidently that I believe that Paul did not kill Nicola. Let's move on. We certainly do not need to go over this fictitious narrative that the Lancashire Constabulary concocted. Because, as I've said from the very beginning, and you can go back and watch all my videos, and you will see, if you do choose to watch them, that I went over the Paul and Emma theory. But I didn't find enough evidence that actually backed that theory up to believe that it's true. And believe me, if I had, then that's what we would be talking about right now. I have no reason to back Paul in any way, or anybody else for that matter. I'm trying to find the truth, and I'm going where the evidence is taking me. The controlled media has been publishing misleading and fabricated reports ever since the inquest began. They have been throwing people under the bus while at the same time telling us that they're innocent, while looking at suspicious people and telling us that they're not suspicious, that they're irrelevant. Their only intent is to confuse everybody. And this inquest was re-victimizing everybody all over again, including Nicola, with this new yet pretty much the same narrative from the inquest. Only this time, they've added a few more players, a few more characters to the show. You guys all know, I believe there was a cover-up, not just to Nikki's death, but to her abduction. And they have done everything in their power to maintain this successful cover-up. And it has been successful, right? The case is closed. It was an accident. Cha-ching, we win. They have woven a web of deceit in order to conceal the truth while simultaneously herding the public like sheep towards their river narrative that was put together from the outset. They have had to resort to as many red herrings as possible, and they have wrapped up a pretty little package with a big bright bow for everyone to unwrap, full of outright lies mixed with truth, all with the end result to deceive you. Lancashire Constabulary did not concoct this plan. They are simply being forced to engage in this cover-up. It is my belief that February 19th had not one real cop present for the recovery of Nikki's body. This entire case was taken over by people in a much higher position for a much larger reason. At the beginning of this video, I talked about the Ring doorbell footage of Nikki leaving her home that morning. And I told you how that CCTV video is the only legit video that we have been shown. No doubt, if it had been altered, it would have had the same white label with added in time as all of the other CCTV images that we have been shown, such as this one, alleged to be Richard Fife, and this one of Claire Chesham. These images could have been obtained at any day and any time during the last 4 months, either by remote hacking into their CCTV system After all, these CCTV images were clearly taken from the same property on Allotment Lane. And if that sounds absurd, then the only other possibility would be that the people who own this address on Allotment Lane are cooperating with the powers that be. We know that by Richard Fife's own sworn statement at the inquest that he confirmed he was not there at 8:33 a.m. The other image of Claire Chesham, we'll get into that when we talk more about Claire. But before that, I do want to point out that there were still 2, albeit only 2, genuine CCTV images that we can be sure were from the day itself. And these are the photos that were published in the media at the beginning of Christine Bauman, the woman in red, and the woman in yellow pushing the pram. If you viewed my Lady in Red video, then you'll know my stance on Christine Bauman. She was a misdirection, and this was pulled off by Rupert Fletcher. And this is why the time of her walk specifically isn't known. For some reason, even though she was in the area that morning for quite some time, Dr. James Adley omitted both her and her statement from the inquest. Going back to Richard Fife, I pointed out in my Man in Black video that Richard Fife lived in France and his daughter Amy resided in Garsdang. Because I want to be completely transparent with you, and it is important that I am, I have since found out some information that I need to share with you. Richard Fife, as well as his partner, Amanda Davies, relocated from France, where they lived since 2005, to St. Michael's about 12 months ago. So they have been living in the area for the last year. Clearing that up, that obviously does make it more possible that Richard Fife was in the area that morning. And this brings me back to the very first timeline. 9:15 a.m. on the river path, there was a couple who had claimed to have interacted with Nikki, joking and laughing, and I actually forgot all about these two. But after that first week, this couple disappeared, never to be mentioned again. They confused me with this information because I thought it was Keith Barlow and his wife Hillary. But then it came out that Keith had been walking his dog alone and that Hillary only spoke for him when she described what he saw that morning. And don't worry, we are going to get into Keith Barlow. Something that was mentioned in Richard Fife's statement, which I don't know why, but I need to push this for some reason. This is a sworn statement. This is not a letter that he wrote. This is a sworn statement, a legal statement made under oath. But what was not printed in the media, along with several other things, is that his wife is a woman by the name of Amanda Davies. The BBC put out an article on February 2nd where a reference was made to a woman by the name of Amanda. As you see here, a woman called Amanda told BBC Radio Lancashire she and her husband saw Miss Bulley and her dog shortly before she disappeared. Amanda said, quote, "It is a lady that comes on a walk every day. The dog you see every day. I believe there has been a telephone left." She went on to say, "Just an absolute mystery. I can't explain it." Unquote. Boom! And just like that, Richard Fife and Amanda Davies are established assets in the cover-up to Nikki's abduction, playing the role of fake witnesses twice. So let me make it really clear. From the beginning, the statement by Richard Fife was that he was there that morning and he did see Nikki, but that he was not alone walking his dog at 8:33 a.m. He was with his wife, Amanda, at 9:15 a.m. and saw Nikki on the river path. In that very same BBC article, the other fake eyewitness account by Keith Barlow, which was made at 9:10 a.m., white fluffy dog man, was introduced as part of the second timeline after Richard and Amanda's fake eyewitness accounts from the first timeline. Yet, Keith Barlow also miraculously disappeared. Again, more on Keith Barlow later. In regards to the most recent video that I put out going over the Fitbit and all of the inconsistencies, there are a few things I need to add. This visual I am taking directly from Chris's Substack titled The Abduction and Murder of Nicola Bulley Part 3. It is just a visual to show a point that I need to make. In Chris's blog, he asked the readers to do a little experiment. He asked the readers to imagine you have the following smartwatch data from these 3 activities in this graphical form. Imagine you have to make sworn statements in court as to what you understand from it. These are activities that were recorded by a device that works exactly the same way as Nikki's Fitbit. They show heart rate and beats per minute, plotted against distance in kilometers. Looking at these charts, what would you be confident in summarizing? Without a doubt, the first difference you notice is between the graph on the left versus the two on the right. The two on the right have a very inconsistent, spiky pattern than the graph on the left, right? These are both river path walks with no elevation at a consistent pace similar to that which Nikki would walk, both a little over 5 kilometers, displaying an average heart rate of 93 beats per minute. The point is, looking at these graphs, it is impossible to pinpoint any reliable heart rate at any point. And the reason for that is because these devices do not measure heart rate itself. The devices use algorithms to calculate approximate heart rate via the optical heart rate sensor, which flashes green LEDs many times per second to detect volume changes in the capillaries above your wrist. I talked about that in my Fitbit video, that these devices work off an algorithm of the specific user, but I really didn't go much more into that. When DC Keith Greenhalgh, thank you for those of you who told me how to pronounce it, I did Google it to be sure, and you were all correct. He told the Inquest Nikki, quote, very possibly, unquote, went in the water at 9:22 a.m. from analysis of her Fitbit. Now, I just showed you the graph and what it would look like to try to figure out any sort of real spike in heartbeat. So you can clearly see he was talking out of his ass to fit the chosen narrative. In learning this new information, 9:22 a.m. really doesn't mean anything anymore, because these devices are simply not sensitive enough to reflect quick changes to actual heart rate, like a sudden shock, for example. And because of that, all you will see is these random variations. I did notice during the live premiere of the Fitbit video that I watched along with many of you that 100 beats per minute, considered a spike while someone is walking briskly, isn't really a spike at all. We do know she was taking propranolol, and that would lower heart rate. But even so, during a walk or during any type of physical activity, you would want your heart rate to be above 100 beats per minute. So I really wouldn't consider 100 beats per minute to be a spike, as in something shocking happening. And I noticed that during the premiere of my own video, and I made a comment in the chat about it, and a few of you saw it and agreed. DC Greenhalgh was simply trying to persuade people that this 100 beats per minute heart rate spike was indicative of something, when in reality, it's indicative of nothing whatsoever. In fact, this entire 9:22 time and subsequent heartbeats per minute spike should be completely ignored altogether. The only purpose for it was to draw you into their web of lies. Another distraction. And it even worked on me. Thank goodness we have Chris, right? Okay, so now that we have 9:22 out of the way, and just to be clear, this doesn't take away from any of the other information that I shared about the Fitbit. There's no way that Fitbit was in the water those 23 days at all. Look over there. Remember. So now that we're talking about times, and we have 9:22 out of the way, let's talk about the next time that has been embedded in our brains. And while I can't say day one, because day one, that time was 9:35, if you remember, but it was changed to 9:33 once DSI Rebecca Smith was put in charge. And ever since then, it has been the biggest time in the timeline, with the exception of 9:22, which we have just thrown out the window. 9:33 was claimed to be the discovery of the phone and Willow and harness. These items were said to be discovered by Penny. Yes, everyone, the infamous Penny Fletcher, who has never been interviewed by the media. In fact, other than being hounded by Curtis Arnold of Curtis Media, which was more likely to prevent her from telling her story.
We're going, look, you see how it's open? That's why we walked in, and we thought you'd come out initially, but we didn't see you. So yeah, anyway, you do realise what the media write is not always accurate, right?
Everyone lies.
Exactly,
yeah,
you know that, right?
Go on.
Do you have anything to say about Nicola Bulley?
Nothing at all.
Nothing?
Go on, nothing at all.
What about the dogs? Do you like dogs?
Go on, off you go.
Okay.
It's actually pretty surprising that CCTV images of Penny from non-existent CCTV cameras haven't been invented, fully equipped with the white labels displaying 9:33 a.m., as do the rest of the phony CCTV images. No doubt more than half of the public would believe it too, and we would have YouTube channels running wild with it. The fact is, Penny is indeed withholding information. But the information she's withholding would be extremely damaging to the narrative. And here's the thing. While she may be concealing certain information, she is not a liar. And she had no reason to lie under oath. She was safe in the comfort that no real questions were going to be asked of her. Just as no real questions were asked of anyone during the entire inquest, thus leaving so many unanswered questions. Penny testified under oath that she took her dog for a walk from her farm up through the 5-bar gate that follows the river around, confirming she saw no one at all, arriving at, quote, 9:40 a.m. earliest, unquote, to the wooden stile adjacent to the bench. That is a direct quote from Penny Fletcher at the inquest. And again, these are not just words. These are sworn statements under oath. Did you catch it? Penny saw no one at all. And at the very earliest she arrived to the wooden stile adjacent to the bench was 9:40 a.m. And there is nothing else to say about that, other than 9:33 has always been a lie. So you can kick that time right out the door with 9:22. So we have DSI Rebecca Smith falsely claiming this discovery at the bench taking place at 9:33 a.m., while simultaneously the controlled media is duping people into suspecting that Penny was there much earlier still. Hence the live broadcast by Inzamam Rashid and Kay Burley, the dynamic duo bumping into Ron, whom we now know is named Roger. And this was all done to assist in eliminating the possibility of the scream being linked to the assault. Yes, this was all to explain away the scream that was heard by Helen O'Neill. And we're going to get into that in a minute. My point is, Penny undoubtedly heard that scream too. It is extremely possible that Penny also saw more than she should have. She was simply at the wrong place at the wrong time. And like I said, we're going to get into that. But I want to talk about another time while we're talking about time. 9:10 a.m. There have been more people linked to this time than any other time. And yet, this time means nothing. During the inquest, Claire Chesham was brought in to give false testimony. And it is my opinion that when a real investigation is done, Claire Chesham should be one of the first people they seek to question. You remember Keith Barlow, the alleged eyewitness who had the last supposed sighting of Nikki at 9:10 a.m. in the upper field, right? Lancashire Police made an update on February 6th, stating that at 9:10 a.m., approximately, of course, as all times are approximate, quote, a witness, somebody who knows Nicola, saw her on the upper field walking her dog Willow. Work is ongoing today to establish exactly what time that was. Now here's the thing about Claire Chesham, who obviously took Keith Barlow's place during the inquest as the last witness to see Nikki at 9:10 a.m. But Claire Chesham is very well known in the village. She's even on the PTA with Emma White and Nikki herself, which is a whole nother thing, a whole nother video in and of itself. It's apparent that originally Richard Fife was supposed to be in the fields at 9:10 a.m., which is why his written statement said that he was in the fields at 9:10 a.m. But the timeline of the inquest does not put him there at 9:10 a.m. The timeline of the inquest puts him out of the entire area before Nikki even made her team's call. Because Dr. Adley is simply reading off of a script, he didn't catch this either. Unfortunately, it appears that the scriptwriters got their lines crossed. And it is important to note that both of these fake witnesses emphasized that Nikki had her phone out in front of her, which implies this too has always been part of the original script, which actually points to this being unlikely during the time she was listening to her Teams call. To top it all off, according to Claire Chesham, Nikki was in the process of walking her second loop in the fields when Claire exited the fields. Unfortunately for Claire, DC Greenhalgh provided evidence that this never happened at the inquest itself. Because another thing that you have not seen reported anywhere is a breakdown of the steps taken from the analysis of Nikki's Fitbit in 15-minute segments between 8 a.m. and 9:30 a.m. And this was all communicated during the inquest in court. The media has this information, but the scriptwriters definitely don't want you to have it. As you can see here on this chart, there is the time and there is the step count. These are from Nikki's Fitbit. Take a good look at them. I'll leave them up for a bit, but you can also pause to look closer. There are steps as you are looking at this that appear to have been recorded while she was driving the kids to school, so just don't pay attention to those. Fitbit, specifically the Versa 4, from what I've gathered, doing all of my research on the Versa 4, it's very unreliable when it comes to steps and heart rate. It can add, it can take away, not a lot, but some. Enough that people have noticed that some of their steps have not been recorded. Anyway, focusing on the steps shown from 8:45 a.m. onwards guarantees us that Nikki could not have walked 2 loops of the fields that morning. The distance in kilometers stated by DC Greenhalgh was a total of 1.3 kilometers from 8:45 a.m. The step count would have been much higher had she walked 2 loops. We also cannot forget Superintendent Sally Riley confirming at the press conference the efforts being made to review dashcam footage from a roadside appeal that was especially focused on the period of 9:10 to 9:15 a.m. Why would they need to appeal for dashcam footage between 9:10 and 9:15 a.m. if they have Claire Chesham as an eyewitness seeing Nikki in the fields at 9:10 a.m.? And this has always been a question for me, because no matter who the witness was, there was a sighting of Nikki in the timeline from the beginning at 9:10 a.m. in the fields. So why were they appealing for dashcam footage on Garstang Road at the same time? What all of this boils down to is there was no one else in the fields at the time Nikki was in the field. She was there alone, by herself, with one exception of her dog Willow. The only other person or persons that were in the field with Nikki at that time were her assailants or assailant, and perhaps one other person who could shed light on this, but is being kept from the limelight. One more thing that DC Greenhalgh also testified to during the inquest is that from an analysis of Nikki's iPhone data between 8 and 11 a.m., they had absolutely no reliable location information whatsoever, other than a lot of pings in the bench area and in the Rowanwater Lake area. I put out a video months ago with the supposition and opinion that there were never any witnesses that could place Nikki in those fields. I even wondered if Nikki herself was ever in those fields, because we simply can't really prove it without any reliable witnesses. Let's talk about the screams again real quick, because there were 2 people that heard screams. One was Helen O'Neill and the other Veronica Cleason. However, I'm only buying one of these stories because it is my opinion that Veronica Cleason did not hear a scream. She was put in the witness lineup in order to discredit Helen O'Neill, who really did hear the scream at 9:35 a.m. When these sworn statements were presented by the media, it was said that Helen O'Neill heard the scream between 9:35 a.m. and 9:55 a.m., and that Veronica Cleason heard the scream at 9:50 a.m. But Helen O'Neill testified at the inquest to hearing that scream at 9:35 a.m., 15 minutes before Veronica testified to the scream she heard at 9:50 a.m. This undoubtedly left everyone scrambling. Were there 2 screams? What's going on? And this included myself. No, there were not 2 screams. There was 1 scream, and it was only heard by one person, Helen O'Neill, and most likely Penny, and possibly one other person. So scratch that, only heard by one person. But it was not heard by Veronica Cleason. The reason Veronica was asked to testify that she heard that scream at 9:50 was so that it couldn't possibly have been used as evidence of third-party involvement, because Nikki had already, according to the narrative, fallen into the water at 9:22 a.m. So any scream heard after 9:22 a.m. would be considered irrelevant. Helen O'Neill is a genuine witness, in my opinion. She testified to what she heard. Helen O'Neill pulled the rug out from under Superintendent Sally Riley from the very beginning. This pulled the trigger that shot DSI Rebecca Smith right to the forefront of this entire investigation. An experienced senior officer in organized crime drafted in together with an entirely false new version of events for a script she has then been forced to stick with, all to explain away a scream. They had to eliminate the possibility of that scream being linked to third-party involvement. This explains why Penny is undoubtedly concealing information. As I said earlier, she must have heard this scream. The route Penny would have taken to the field would not have been from the river path, where you would be able to see people coming from a great distance away, but rather, inconspicuously, she would have been coming through the wooden stile. The harness was never meant to be left in a bundle on the riverbank. Nikki was a very meticulous woman, very organized. She never would have left a harness just thrown in the mud on the ground like that. How it got to be on the ground is impossible to know for certain. But no matter what, based on the information that we have, Penny was the only person to see it in a heap on the ground before it miraculously found its way to the bench a short while later. Remember, Penny saw it on the ground, but everyone else's statement said that the phone and the harness were on the bench. We know that Penny tied Willow up with twine and left to go to her home to start making those phone calls. She memorized, or thought she memorized, the phone number on Willow's tag. However, she memorized it incorrectly, causing her to make several phone calls before finally making any headway with it. After Penny left, I would suggest someone was still in the vicinity and staged the scene for the individuals who arrived after 10 a.m. to find everything on the bench. Remember when I said there was no one present in the fields at the same time as Nikki other than her assailant, but perhaps one other person who was being kept from the limelight? This brings me to Keith Barlow and his wife Hillary. The last but very important piece of the puzzle is to find out why this couple would be caught up in this complex and fabricated 9:10 a.m. eyewitness account. We talked about Isla Traquar and how she spoke with Penny that first day, and that Penny had provided her witness statement, including her encounter with Keith Barlow. But it wasn't until DSI Smith took up SIO 4 days later that the police appeal for the man with the white fluffy dog was issued. Of course, Keith Barlow was omitted from providing any witness statement at the inquest, but we know for a fact he was the second person on the scene because he chatted with Penny near the bench area before Penny retreated to Allotment Lane to make those calls. Keith Barlow from Rowanwater is now placed in the fields between 9:35 a.m. and 9:59 a.m. Yeah. He too surely would have heard the scream. Because of this, I can only theorize that he must hold some very important information in order to have been written in as an earlier eyewitness so as to be written out and otherwise distanced from these events later. So much so that his wife Hillary was the go-to person to relay the false witness accounts, while Keith himself has never spoken nor written a word. Yet, he was the only person who was right there. There are two additional points to consider, given that everything points to a planned abduction. For anyone who's not familiar with the area, you only need two lookouts if you want to cover your bases. The first one is by the gate in the fields, the kissing gate, if you will, to provide ample notice of anyone coming through that river path. And the second one would be the gate into Rowanwater, so as to account for any potential dog walkers from this residential estate. Penny's more unusual route may not have been accounted for, as it's not a main way for someone to come into the fields. It's basically coming off of her property. At the present time, Keith Barlow remains the only person, other than the unknown third party, who had the opportunity to place the harness on the bench after Penny left, before leaving back through the Rowan Water gate and back to his Rowan Water home at 9:59 a.m. So what do you guys think of all of this information? I look forward to seeing the comments in the comment section below on this. It will steer me in the direction that I'm going to move forward, as it always tends to do. Of course, this is all my opinion. It is based on facts. I'm not straight out accusing anybody here, but there are certainly two people that really need looking into. Obviously, there are many more than just two, but I would say these two individuals know a lot more. And they are the first two people that need to be questioned when we get an independent investigation going. You know, and it's almost ironic because DSI Rebecca Smith considered both of these people key witnesses. And in fact, they are. They are key witnesses to finding out what really happened to Nicola Bulley. Keith Barlow is indeed a key witness to the abduction of Nicola Bulley, in my opinion. I hope you guys have a great day, great week, great weekend, whatever time you're watching this. Maybe we'll do a premiere on this one, I don't know. But otherwise, be safe, be healthy, be happy, and most of all, be unapologetically you. Talk to you on the next one. Bye-bye.